Okay, this is P.7 day 4, solving quadratic equations by completing the square. Completing the square is a specific way by which we can solve equations. So I'm going to teach you that technique today, and you will have to reproduce that exactly on the test. So while there are other ways to do that, if you can't show me that you can know this exact process on the test, you won't get points for this question. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to first get the constant, which is 5, over to the other side. So moving that over allows us to get x squared minus 6x on this side, and then we'll leave a little space, and then 0 minus 5 is negative 5 over here. Okay. What we want to do is create on this side a specific type of trinomial. And in order to do that, we need to figure out what that number is right there. It's not negative 5. So in order to do that, we can make that number from this number. So here's how we take that and we make our last number. So negative 6 divided by 2, that's the first thing we do. We take that number there in the B position and we divide it by 2. And then we take that answer and we square it. That is the number that we need to add on both sides. We need it completes this side. It gets us the type of trinomial that we need, but we can't just add 9 on one side. We have to add 9 on the other side. So there's my work to find that number right there that I need. This now is a special type of trinomial. It factors into two binomials that match. In this case, x minus 3 and x minus 3. There's not every type of trinomial that can factor this way, right? But that's what we're looking for when we're completing the square. That type of thing when we factor. On this side, we add them together and get 4. Now you know that this can be written in a shorter way. It can be written as x minus 3 quantity squared. And then, in order to solve for x, I take the square root of both sides. Once I have something squared on one side by itself, I can take the square root of both sides. Don't forget, in front here, if you take a normal number and put a square root on top of it, you have to include the plus or minus at that time. Then, these two cancel and you get x minus 3 equals plus or minus. The square root of 4 is just 2. So, now we're almost there, but here's what we do. We solve for x by adding 3 on both sides, which gives us x equals 3 plus or minus 2. But then you keep going. Some people stop here. Don't stop here. We have two answers. X equals 3 plus 2 and x equals 3 minus 2. That's what plus or minus means, right? Either 3 plus 2 or 3 minus 2. So we have two answers, 5 and 1. And that's how you solve by completing the square. One more example, number 2. We'll go through this process one more time. In number 2, we won't be able to keep going here because the second number is a square root, and you can't add a regular number with the square root. This one we could because both of them were just regular numbers. You can add and subtract regular numbers. All right. Number 2, again, we want to get these first two terms by themselves, so we're going to push the constant over to the other side. We do that by adding 1 on both sides. Leave a little space there. 0 plus 1 is 1. This side we want to make a special kind of trinomial, and we do that by taking the 4 and cutting it in half. Dividing that number by 2 is the first step. Then we take our answer and we square it. Okay, so there's my aside, my little side notes. So my answer is 4. So I take my 4, and that goes here to help complete my perfect special kind of trinomial. However, if I add 4 on one side, I have to add 4 on the other side of an equation. Now, this one should factor now over here into a binomial and the same binomial. In this case, it's x plus 2 times x plus 2. These should match. And then over here, I have 5. You know that these can be written in a shorter way, x plus 2 quantity squared. And then once we have something squared on one side of an equation, we can take the square root to solve for x. Remember, on this side, once you take a regular number like 5, for example, and you put the square root on top of it, you take it from a regular and you make it a square root, that's when we have to use our plus or minus. On this side, the square and the square root cancel to be x plus 2. And the square root of 5 cannot simplify any further. We're just going to have to leave it the square root of 5. And then finally, to solve for x, we're going to minus 2 on both sides, so x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 5. And that's it. So our two answers are negative 2 plus root 5 and negative 2 minus root 5. Of course, leaving it like this is just fine, and that's what is usually done.